Hello everybody, Chris here, and in this video we're going to be doing a walkthrough of the entire LibreOffice suite, kind of give you an introduction about what it's about and what each of the different components do without going into too much individual detail, because there's a lot that these packages can do and you don't want to do like a 4-hour tutorial here. So LibreOffice is an office suite, obviously. The most obvious comparison would be Microsoft Office out there, though there are other ones, like one by Corel. I believe it's called Corel WordPerfect. And there's also other alternatives to LibreOffice built off of the same code, like OpenOffice, though I would definitely say LibreOffice is the one that's being kept most up to date and cleanest. So why would you even use LibreOffice over one of the competitors, especially Microsoft Word? And the main reason, or two main reasons I would say, comes down to cost, because LibreOffice is free, and secondly, it's cross-platform as well. So if you like having a suite that you can use on Windows, but then you also may use something like Linux in the future, LibreOffice works on Linux, and I believe it also is Mac compatible as well. So that's really cool. So the 5 different apps included in the LibreOffice suite are LibreOffice Writer, which you can see here, probably the kind of interface we're most useful. Secondly, LibreOffice Calc, which, if you know Microsoft, is most comparable to Microsoft Office Excel. LibreOffice Draw, which is a tool for making diagram-based documents. LibreOffice Math, which makes it easier to make properly formulated mathematical formulas. This is the kind of tool that probably only math students or professors are going to touch a lot, or maybe engineers, I'm not 100% sure. But one of the things you might have noticed is that it's a pain to actually type out formulas using a standard text editor. And the whole point of this is that it's specially designed just to do math. So you can create formulas and you can import it into basically something like LibreOffice Writer. So you add a formula into your other document and it looks correct. It looks like a math formula should be written. And then there's, let's see, LibreOffice Impress. Okay, so I'm wrong. There's actually 6, my bad. LibreOffice Impress, most comparable to Microsoft PowerPoint. There's also some other similar slideshow presentation software out there. If you've ever created a slideshow, this interface here should look familiar. And then finally, LibreOffice Base, probably the tool that the fewest viewers here are going to really need to use, so I'll only really touch on it last. But it's for connecting to and modifying databases. So I don't want to throw out too many terminologies. So SQL databases, if you've ever heard of that, SQL language, being able to write database queries, basically return some of the data that's contained in what are called tables in databases, that kind of thing. LibreOffice Base is a tool for interacting with those databases. So it's not the only one you can use, but it's one option. Okay, so LibreOffice Writer probably needs the least explanation, but it is the one that most people are going to be using the most. Because in LibreOffice Writer, this is the kind of tool you use to write all your documents. So we could say this might be the front page of a report or a school essay or just something we're typing up for fun. And you have all of these tools up here at the top, like the ability to center text horizontally. And then you can start typing in things like the title of the book. But what makes it better than Notepad is, well, you have a lot more options available to you for one thing. But they also provide an interface that's more clean for creating properly formatted documents for printing. Whereas something like Notepad is really just for writing quick notes, and if you try to print it, it'll look horrible. But this actually shows you how it's going to look when it's printed before you print it. So like right now, we'd be looking at a standard 8.5 by 11 inch document. So you can do things like increase the font size over here. So title of the book, maybe we want to change the font. So you can click on that drop down and go to one of many different kinds. Add in extra lines, and if you do Control Enter, it brings you to a new page where you can start typing in the rest of your document. So blah, blah, blah. and you probably want to change the font there. Also, other things that you have available, the ability to add in headers and footers, that kind of thing. So information that might be added to every single page. Like, for instance, the writer name of the person who is writing this document. So appears on page 1, appears on page 2. And of course, for title pages, you can actually remove it from the title page. But those are tutorials for more getting into the program, which I do believe I have some from the past on my channel if you want to go ahead and search for those. So moving on, LibreOffice Calc. This is a spreadsheet document creator. So it's good for a couple of things, or I would say a good number of things. One, if you have like numbers you want to add up, you can do accounting here. So for instance, you might try to do keeping track of your tax expenses, like what expenses do you have which are business write-off, and you might have several columns. So price, date purchased, reason, tax write-off as like a yes or no, I don't know. And then down here you would have like the name of the, let's say product name. You can take all 5 of these and bold them, Control B. But the idea here is that you can just kind of put in these this data in these columns, and then when you have all the data, you can do things like formulas to add in the information. So all these columns, or all these cells rather, from B2 to B6 get added up to this number down here. So quick mathematical calculations, really cool. You can also do things like sort. So let's see, sort descending. So current selection. Okay, so it's sorting from the value in here, descending. You can also do that with names, which of course would be alphabetical rather than numeric value. And just by the nature of having these tables, it allows you to do a lot of different formulas, organize data. Really good for keeping track of things. It's almost like having a database table, actually. But yeah, those are some of the reasons you might use LibreOffice Calc. If you have a bunch of data or a bunch of entries, maybe purchase orders, those are the kinds of things you can keep track of in here. Accountants probably would like this software. If they're not using LibreOffice Calc, they're probably using Microsoft Excel, which is almost the exact same. Okay, so moving on. LibreOffice Draw. So first off, we probably want to change the orientation into landscape here. Just kind of from my vague knowledge of the subject, I would think a diagram that you're going to draw would look better or be more readable if it's wider rather than taller. Now you can create basically any kind of diagram here. The more professional uses would kind of be business related, like organizing maybe how, let's say, a mobile application is supposed to work. So each of these shapes you draw will have different meanings. Yeah, you can see flowchart stuff down here. And there's like a whole, geez, how would you say? Like a whole standardized process to this, where basically how you draw things, every little thing has a different meaning. In the case of like flowcharts. So you can see what they're kind of representing here. So this 6-sided polygon is actually meant to represent a preparation stage in the flowchart. And what you would do is you draw basically arrows from here to here, and it's supposed to represent things like how an application is supposed to work, or what is the business process you've got going on, in those cases more typical professional uses. But really, it's not just limited to that. You can kind of draw whatever you want here. So you might just be goofing around, or you might actually be using it for a real purpose. But the general idea is that you have a bunch of shapes, and you can use those shapes to draw diagrams or to draw just goofy art if that's your thing. And yeah, if you really want to get into that, you probably want to go ahead and look up some specific tutorials about it online. It's been a while since I had the college class and all of this. I don't even remember what they called it. Not Venn diagrams, but there was definitely a term for it. Anyway, probably a tool that not too many people are going to really need to use. It's not like Paint, though. I will say that. If you're just trying to draw like art, you're probably better off in something like Photoshop or GIMP. This tool is more for business diagrams. So I hope that gives you a kind of rough overview of it. I know I stumbled a bit there. Okay, so next up, LibreOffice Math. As I was mentioning before, one of the problems of formulas, or trying to draw like math formulas, let's delete this stuff here, is that it's hard to do things like having a division sign where you one over the other to represent a fraction. But if you do it in LibreOffice Math, it's incredibly simple. You can just drag and drop all of these different mathematical operations. They even got calculus in here, so this is, and it's been a while since I've done calculus, but the sum of like everything under the curve, that kind of stuff. So yeah, if you're trying to do math and you want to actually include your math inside of a, let's say, a LibreOffice Writer document, maybe you're typing up like a school math assignment or something like that, or maybe you're doing a PhD paper on mathematics, I don't know. Then this tool makes it easier to write your formulas properly. So, for instance, and I'm not really familiar with this tool, but so this would be like 3 over 5, but now it's saying 5 times the cosine of whatever I put in here, which, if I recall, would be, it's either radians or degrees. So now what this formula says 3 over 5 of the cosine of 30, and that would spit out a mathematical result if you were to actually calculate it. Now you will notice that it doesn't just go ahead and spit out an answer for you here. It's not really meant for doing mathematical calculations so much as it is rather writing down the process or the proper mathematical formulas as you go forward in creating your basically question answers or showing all the work for your problems. That's a really good example. So you need to show the work for a math problem that you happen to be doing in school. Then this would be a good way to do it. So after you've gone ahead and done your formulas, you can save them. And the idea there is you would want to probably import them over here. So I can show you how to do that much at least. So insert, and we'll be looking for formula. So object, yeah, object formula. And now if we go up here, we can import formula. And I have one on the desktop. I guess that's the one we just saved or saved over. And you go ahead and you import your mathematical formulas inside of LibreOffice Writer. So I apologize for not really making the greatest formula there or something that would actually be impressive. But just imagine you were trying to do like 3 divided by 5 inside of LibreOffice Writer. How are you going to do it where you have the vertical or the horizontal line there? It would be kind of a pain, but because LibreOffice Math is set up specifically so that you can just write mathematical formulas, it makes it so much easier to actually write them. As long as you spend a little time and you get to know the tool so that you can use it properly. Okay, so moving on to, I guess we'll cover base really quick because it's kind of in the way there. Okay, so LibreOffice Impress. I know, sorry guys, really should have covered this one first because this is standard Office software that a lot of people, even kids, are going to use. So LibreOffice Impress, the idea here is you're creating a slideshow. So you can always start your slideshow, and you might open up LibreOffice Impress when you're ready to present, but also when you're writing your slideshow. So if you click on one of these slides down here, you can add in any kind of information you want. They're great for having big, visible, bulleted points. So bulleted points. And you'll have like your supporting evidence. They're really easy to read. My computer seems to be lagging a bit. Keeps things organized. Of course, you can edit footers, which you might have like the name of the person down here or the date of the person down there. These are just standard templates. You don't actually have to use these specific ones. Let's see if we can go ahead and edit that there. Insert header footer. Okay, so to actually add in the footer, what we want to do is go to Insert, Header, and Footer, and we actually change it directly on this slide instead. So if we wanted the date, for instance, we could put this, and footer here, maybe Chris Tutorials, and leave the slide number there, but apply to all, and then that's going to change the information down there. Now, obviously, you can create your different slideshows with different templates. You can do things like add in external spreadsheets, documents, videos. Yeah, once again, the bulleted points, which is just fine. But the general idea of a presentation that you create in LibreOffice Impress or even Microsoft PowerPoint is that it's an assistant tool for you to give a presentation in. Or you can honestly send presentations like this to people, and if you just send them the file and have them open it up and read it, that's one option as well, but usually people use it for doing their own presentations. Also, over here on the side, you can see that you can do transitions between slides, so it's not just like having a really long report. It's actually supposed to be a bit more visually interesting. Kind of the main idea there. So with LibreOffice Base, you can technically create these HSQL DB embedded files, which I think saves as like a OSB or something like that. So Open Office B, basically a built-in embedded database. But most people, if you're really trying to do serious work with it, are probably going to be trying to connect to an existing database like MySQL. That would be for basically websites and that kind of thing. A lot of websites run on MySQL. Or if you're talking about like serious corporate infrastructure, it might be Oracle. And then JDBC is the way you connect to it. So you'll have to like put in a bunch of different information, such as the name of the database, where it's located, and the port number where you're connecting on, as well as locating where your Javas may be. So I believe JDBC is Java Database Connector file. But let's just go ahead and create a new database here, just so I can roughly show you some of the things, because databases are just basically a series of tables, and each of those tables are going to have entries. So it's very much like a LibreOffice Calc file, except that instead of one spreadsheet that's kind of self-contained, you can actually write database queries against it. So we might create a table, and this is the designer here. So name would be a typical field, and you can give it a description if you want, cost maybe, dates, and vendor. So you can change the field types, of course. So, and this is, of course, designing the built-in database, but because this tool allows you to connect into other types of databases, you can change it there as well. So I don't think you're just limited to these ODB databases, because that's really not the case. So I think for cost, you'd be looking at decimal? Yeah, a decimal, something like that. Okay, so let's go ahead and save that as table purchasing orders. Okay, yeah, more database stuff. Every table needs to have a primary key, so that should be an ID. Yeah, okay, ID integer, that's very standard. And hopefully we can go ahead and back out of this index design. Where is the backup tool? Close window. Okay, well, anyway, with these tables, you create or access, if it's in the case of another database. Oh, there we go. Okay, table purchasing orders. So now we can start adding in fields. And this would be manually typing into a database, which you would never really do if it was like a serious live database, unless you absolutely had to. But you can start adding in orders. And oh geez, it's so hard to explain so much about this in one video, but your programmer might have like some PHP code or something like that that connects into your database as well, and then that would do all of the inserting and removing of these different entries into the database. But you can go ahead and manually edit in LibreOffice Base, and you might need to look up some information, and you can do that either by manually going into the tables, or you can write SQL queries. Okay, so let's see. What kind of product might we be purchasing? I don't know. Nintendo DS cost $100. Date. I wonder if today works. Okay, it didn't quite work, but yeah, whatever. And Amazon. So we save that, and we're going to want to close that window. But we went ahead and we manually added in an entry into the purchasing orders table. And then you can do things like views and a bunch of other stuff, queries for SQL queries, forms, which are kind of like graphical interfaces for actually adding information into the database. So it might be like create a form, you type in some information like the name you're searching for in a certain table, and it spits out results after you hit OK on the submit form. But already getting way too deep into this for basically an overview of LibreOffice. But that's the idea. You use LibreOffice Base for database connecting, or if you really want the embedded databases, though in most serious cases, you're probably connecting to an SQL or a MySQL or a Oracle database. But I think that's all the parts of LibreOffice, so hopefully this video has given you a pretty good overview of what you've got going on with the LibreOffice package. Compared to Microsoft Office, it's got pretty much all of the same main functionality, but it's not quite as commonly used. I think Microsoft Office is still king when it comes to product recognition, usage in both school and corporate worlds. But if you're looking for a free alternative that can pretty much open up all of those documents that you might be getting from a Microsoft Office user, LibreOffice is definitely a really solid tool to go ahead and try out. So that's going to be it for this video. I've been Chris. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in my future video content.